Dear Venerable Brothers and Sisters, dear Dhamma friends, today is the first day in our second session, that is basically in English medium, and now is the time for the day's Dhamma talk. To start the Dhamma talk, everyone may consent 3 times with sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Atitang nanvagameya nappatikanke anagatang yadati pahinang tang appattanca anagatang paccupannanca yo dhammang tattha vipassati asanghirang asangkuppang tang disva manubruha yeti. Dear Dhamma friends, the quotation I cited is taken from one of the discourses of the Buddha, as far as the references are concerned, that is you find in the Sutta Pitaka, specifically in the Majjhima Nikaya, that is middle length sayings. There are 151 discourses in this Majjhima Nikaya, and this one, the particular one, is known as Bhaddekaratta Sutta. When you read it, it is strange that under this particular name, specifically the key terms, Bhaddekaratta, there are 4 discourses, and content-wise, all are the same. That is explaining the meaning of the Bhaddekaratta, and there are at least 3 incidents during the time of the Buddha. It appeared again and again in a very specific and dramatic manner. That is why when in the first synod, Venerable Ananda repeated in 4 times with 3 specific backgrounds, case histories, together with the original deliverance of the Buddha. That indicates this concept of Bhaddekaratta is very, very important as far as the teaching of the Buddha is concerned, as well as pragmatically when and where one seriously practicing. So during this course, during this retreat, we will take this particular sutta or particular concept of Bhaddekaratta as the common topic, and we will try to deal it little by little so that day by day we can go into the depth. And as far as the translations or translation into English is concerned, of course the PTS translation is there, but recently Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, he translated, and when the 4th and 5th like editions happens, he himself changed the name, not the particularly name is the Bhaddekaratta, but the translation, and he has also taken footnotes to explain why it is in the changing nature. And together with the American Rahula, one of the early monks, and still is of course practicing, and he has also written 1 book, One Night Shelter. So he translated this as the One Night Shelter, and Bhikkhu Bodhi tried to give one fortunate attachment or single night shelter. Likewise, there's a number of changes, nuances in the translation. And Venerable Katukurunti Jnanananda, he has written a separate book on this particular sutta, and he has dealt in his early part about this, the paradoxical situation, the problematic situation regarding this name, and he ultimately arrived at the translation as the ideal solitude, quoting Venerable Jnanamoli. He has given it as ideal lover of solitude. So while we are discussing, we will be slightly touching on this topic, on this aspect also. That is to say, why this particular name, Bhaddekaratta Sutta. Bhaddekaratta is going to give so much of nuances, so much of shades of meanings, but it is not much of our interest. But anyway, the content is very, quite relevant to what we are doing here in practice. So, when the Buddha addressing the monks while he was in Savatthi, and he says, whenever he is defining this term Bhaddekaratta, the basic idea he communicates with Atitang nan magameya nappatipankhe anagata. He says that whenever someone is practicing specifically insight meditation, he says, let one not track back to the past and not yearn for the future that is yet to come. These are the two things to be avoided in order to come here and now. And therefore, first and foremost, the Buddha says, don'ts. Don't let the mind to be associated with the past or yearn for the future. And then reason it out, telling that whatever may be the past, it is also left behind. That is, something happened. And the yet to come, that future, is yet unattained. So therefore, the best thing is to contemplate or be aware of the present moment. And therefore, which is present is that if someone understanding this, the disadvantages of the past, contemplation of the past and the future, and he come and discern in the present with the insight knowledge, that is the meaning of this Bhaddekaratta. Bhaddekaratta is a specific kind of a person the Buddha is appreciating, and he is the person not appreciating the past, not dwelling upon the past or yearning or chasing behind the future. He try to keep the mindset in here and now. And while someone is trying to keep the mind here and now, it is just not mere be here and now. He or she has to still maintain the mindset not to fallen into the desire or into the hatred. In other words, we can say, as far as the time aspect is concerned, past and the future represent two extremes. And the middle is the middle path. The present is the middle path. So therefore, whenever someone comes here and now, he or she can be happy in the sense, appreciating, now I am somewhat come to the middle path, that means the present moment. But even then, the Buddha says, while traveling in this middle path, there may be some inclinations towards the attachment or to the hatred, even though you have already in the middle path. So that is really the technical side of the particular yogi, those who have taken the mindfulness or be in the present kind of meditation. So that is the specific task of the Buddha to help promote in this kind of cases, whenever the mind go towards the attachment or towards the hatred kind of thing. So presenting this general idea, the Buddha himself asking, what does it mean by the tracking back to the past, and what does it mean by the yearning for the future, that he wished to explain in terms of 5 aggregates. Namely, the corporeality, the materiality, the feelings, the perception, the volitional activities, and the consciousness itself. So, early explanation, the Buddha start how one can understand the tracking back to the past in terms of the materiality, how one should understand yearning to the future in terms of the materiality. That means whatever the seen, you have heard, smelled, tasted and touched in the past, it is going to give kind of a memory with a desire or undesirable label attached. So whenever we remember the past in terms of all these experience through the ear, the eye, ear, the nose, the tongue and the body, that is how we get engaged and occupied with the past. And similarly, whenever we are projecting future, we are thinking in terms of getting a beautiful pictures and desirable music or sounds and good smells and the tastes and the comfort and luxuries in contact. So we are yearning to the future. That is what generally uninstructed commoners are doing. But if you wish to be a Bhaddekaratta, or in terms of ideal lover of solitude, you must understand you will miss the bus by living in the past and the future. So therefore, on principle, you have to understand it and instead try to dwell in the present. So whenever someone ready to accept or ready to deduce this idea or rationalize this idea, he or she may seek instructions as to how to keep this mindset in the present moment. This is the what basically we can define as the mindfulness. So Buddha not only giving this theoretical background and the conceptual idea, but he himself practiced and give detailed instructions if someone is willing to take it up. That is to say, if someone is really wish to develop this kind of ideal solitude, he or she has to be prepared both in terms of macroclimate and in the microclimate. That is how one can be assured or facilitated to keep the set of mind or the mindset in the present, or keep the mindfulness, be aware of the present moment. So there he says, go to a place where it is not going to give so much of attractive sceneries and so much of attractive sounds, and therefore the Buddha, without any hesitation, he recommends entering into a forest. And that is the place you have no much of attractive or distractive, the sights and the sounds. And or otherwise, the Buddha says, go under a tree or go to a solitude place. So now each of us knows to come to this solitude place, how much it costs in terms of time, the money, arrangements, and traveling from different distance to earn this forest atmosphere and this solitude. So this is to appreciate, not to dwell upon the past or yearning for the future. So therefore, once we come here, that is the way we are appreciating this ideal solitude. We come to a solitude place. But that mere coming, it won't fulfill the task. So therefore, one has to adjust some more microclimate. That is to say, out of the 4 postures, you have to take this posture where there is no much of intentional works are necessary. Your body even keep it in such a symmetrical way, relaxed way, need no any volitional activities. So you knowing the mind can be distracted through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, you try to reduce or you try to fix these variables and take one aspect, highlight it, and observe with total mindfulness or wholeheartedly to increase or sharpen this already earned solitude. So therefore, with the help of the canonical teachings, we have to know, we must understand, the Buddha has appreciated three kinds of solitudes. The bodily one, or physically you go into a forest, or go under a tree, or sit in a solitude place. That is called physical. And the second thing is, that is called Kaya Viveka in Pali. And the second one is the Chitta Viveka, that is the mind must be free from the five hindrances or obsessional kind of defilements. So now, whenever the meditation come into being, basically our aim is to deal with these five hindrances or to get rid of this as much as possible, to get rid of this obsessional kind of defilements. So therefore, if all the scenes, sceneries, sounds, smelling things and taste and the touch available, very difficult for untrained mind to keep the track with. So therefore, once you go on to a place like this, you have been asked just to close your eyes so that you be free from faculty of eye or seeing, or free from the visual objects. And then go to a silent place and then appreciate it in terms of not talking to others, not making noises, and maintaining silence. And do not entertain smells or taste specifically when you are in a sitting meditation. And then the body also you have to keep in such a posture and need not to have any volitional involvement. So out of the four cardinal postures, the Buddha recommends this sitting posture, and once you adjusted it and relaxed, so it will maintain by itself. So this is the way we prepare our mind to come to know about this obsessional kind of defilements and to train ourselves so that we may be somewhat get distance from these five hindrances or this obsessional kind of defilements. So they are, when you sit comfortably, relaxed and the symmetrical way, you are being asked to be aware of here, now, I am. That indicates not only that you are worrying about the past and the future, you must not worry about the other places too. Not in the time dimension, you have to be aware of the space dimension too. Therefore, whenever you sit, you try to be aware of here. Not your homestead or office or other places, you try to keep it here. And yet another dimension is not to worry about the people right round, be unto yourself. So, be here and now, or here, now I am, is the most easy way of defining the term mindfulness, the sati. So, when you sit and be aware of your sitting posture, you can appreciate in number of ways. One thing is not letting the mind to wander off, not letting the mind to be daydreaming, fantasizing. Instead, be aware of your just mere being. And there also, you are not going to entertain seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And instead, see the natural being, just being to happen, and you are fully aware and fully mindful and fully vigilant, fully diligent to this very moment. So when you are keeping like that, it is a completely a new dimension for untrained mind, because throughout our samsara, or throughout the life, we were concerned about outside or extrovert, and instead now to be mindful, you take the mind into the here and now. So therefore, just mere the first trial, first test, you may not be successful. It is understood. And therefore, as I mentioned in the last night talk also, just like a wild buffalo taken from the wilderness and taken into the civilized place like a village or so, and you try to tie into a fast-driven peg, and it will try its best to break the tie and go back to the wilderness. Exactly the way our mind, the Buddha has given as a example as a monkey mind, a mad monkey mind, jumping from object to object, always outwardly, always without an agenda. So, such a monkey mind, with the appreciation of this Bhaddekaratta, with the appreciation of the solitude, if whenever we try to keep it in one here and now situation, of course it is a comes in something novelty, we quite feel uncomfortable and irritable sometimes. Never mind, the yogi means he or she is trying again and again to keep the track with the present moment. There you must not be underestimate the power of defilements, or you must not be discouraging by observing the wandering thoughts or irritation from the external sounds or from the bodily pains. You just knowing that as much as possible, try to keep the attention in the body here and now. When that is happening, you are exposing to your mere being. No any volitional activities, just try to see what is happening within. Some Indian teachers, with the influence of Buddhist insight meditation, they define this exercise as an endeavorance to see who am I. So they say it's quite a spiritual question. So you try your best to understand who am I. Not through the deductive knowledge, not through the theoretical analysis, but merely direct experience. So this is the mindset of the beginner's mind. So when you apply it, hardly it rests inside and fall calm and quiet on the introvert manner. But there is no other way, only the trial and error method. So when you keep on applying, one time the mind will be within yourself, and there's a fair chances for you to feel the breathing process. The breathing is the vital force or the minimum intrinsic dynamism or action happening in the living body. So when and where there are no external distraction, mind comes and rests upon this breath. If anything appear more prominent, there are hardly any chances for the mind to come and falls calm and quiet on the breath. So therefore, knowing that, you eliminate as much as possible the external distractions and then try to keep with the breath. And the teachers, they have drawn a lot of the instructions how to promote this or how to promote this ideal solitude. And with the help of their experience and techniques, they say, if you happen to see the breath, make sure it is happening without any volition. That means no forced breathing. It must be natural breathing. And when that happens, the untrained mind never entertain it. It appear no much of an important thing. So therefore to impose kind of importance, instead of just be aware, you try to feel, you try to experience the in-breath experience and the out-breath experience in a discriminative manner, discrete manner. So that is the technique in order to maximize already earn the breath. So therefore it says, try to see in-breath versus out-breath. So that means when you are, if you happen to experience the in-breath and out-breath face-to-face with, directly under your nose, try to see when the in-breath happens, it is not out-breath, this is the in-breath, and these are the intrinsic characteristics or individual characteristics of this breath, in-breath. And whenever it is gone into the out-breath, you must equally pay the attention to the out-breath and to see their intentional personal characteristics. So in Pali it is called Sabhava Lakkana or Bhava Lakkana. So in English they say natural characteristics of in-breath and out-breath. So more and more you to see this the internal character, intrinsic characteristic or natural characteristics of the in-breath versus out-breath, you will automatically see you can keep the mind more durably and longer with the in-breath and out-breath. So therefore, each and every in-breath, each and every out-breath, you have to see as a completely new one. That is the point where you have to keep the beginner's mind. Each and every oncoming in-breath, out-breath, you must be welcoming and try to see its natural characteristics. Whenever it is happening, we call that the mind is face-to-face. Or the meditative mind, noting mind is face-to-face with the object. So whenever that more and more your mind become familiarized with the in-breath and out-breath, not only you can see the difference between the in-breath and out-breath, if you are vigilant, if you are diligent, you can see the chronological changes from in-breath to in-breath and out-breath to out-breath. So when that happens, that means you are more and more acquainting and be face-to-face with the breath. And in the Satipatthana Sutta and in the Anapanasati Sutta, both you find in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha explained, Digang va asasanto digang asasamiti pajanati, digang va pasasanto digam pasasamiti pajanati. If the long in-breath going to happen, you be aware this in-breath is long. And then when the long out-breath happen, you be aware under your very nose, this is a long out-breath. And when the things are becoming calm and quiet, come under control, naturally the breath, in-breath as well as the out-breath will be shorter. As and when it becomes shorter, you aware comparatively, now I have a short in-breath, now I have a short out-breath. So when that happens, it's a very clear indication your mindfulness is now fairly consistent. And as and when the breath becomes subtler, the shorter, you have to implement or employ more and more sharp mindfulness or fine-tuning in order to keep the track. So now fairly you are on the middle path, and unintentionally the breathing takes place, and your mindfulness is vigilantly and diligently observes in-breath versus out-breath, in-breath versus in-breath, out-breath versus out-breath. When the subtlety going to set in, that is the point a desire or hatred can come and interrupt the trend. Even though you are on the middle path, even though you are advancing, when this continue to going to happen, and if the breath becomes shorter and subtler, then sometimes you may feel it is distracting, it is disturbing, it is monotonous, and it is boring to observe continuously. So there are the undermining tendencies like hatred may set in unless otherwise you are well instructed, unless otherwise you go prepared. And if you are prepared and instructed, when the subtlety happens, when the more and more duration you are facing with the in-breath and out-breath, equally the desire also can come in. Desire also can undermine the situation. So that is why the Buddha says, even if you strategically do away with the past and the future, and if you keep the track in the present moment, under your very nose experience of the in-breath and out-breath, these shades of meaning can come in. A desire or hatred. So only the remedy is go prepared. That is why that is the meaning of this sutta. That is the meaning of these discourses and the discussions and the interviews, when and where such a thing happen, how to deal with them. And what simply happen is, more and more you observe one particular object, its desirability slowly reducing, the monotony and the boredom sets in. And together with this kind of a setup, the mind's natural tendency is to entertain doubts. And you lose interest. So these are the things you have to go prepared. And when and where this kind of things happen, they are not, of course, materiality, they are mental situations. You have to be aware of it and not to break the trend. And when more and more you go to the subtlety, you can understand the incessant battering of or attack of these 5 hindrances will be little and little by little, far and far away. You can be with the breath. More and more you be immediate with the breath. More and more you be familiarized with the breath. Less and less the 5 hindrances as such reduces. So if you have to appreciate it, you must understand that together with that reduction of the strength of the 5 hindrances, the mind becomes more and more closer, penetrating into the primary object or whatever the object you are observing. So meanwhile, kind of undermined tendencies like hatred and desire can come in, so you have to be aware of it. So that means you have to sit a little longer, go prepared, and keep as much as possible with the in-breath and out-breath. And when it is going on, you not only be aware of the object directly happening, but your attention must be to see the coloration of the mind, the mindset, whether it is enthusiastic or bored, whatever it may be, and knowing that your main aim must be to keep the track with the breath. If you taken the breath as the primary object. But of course you can take the rising and falling of the abdomen as the primary object, or any other kind of consistent bodily function, phenomena as the primary object. I am taking this in-breath and out-breath as an example. When it is happening, the Buddha used 2 terms, asanghirang, asangkuppang. Asanghirang, that means immovable way. Whenever the desire going to happen that I am a good meditator, now I can keep the breath long time and it is desirable and kind of thing, you must understand that will be a disturbance if you are not keeping the track with. And as well as asangkuppang, asangkuppa means not to get irritated by the boredom or any other negative feelings like monotony and kind of thing. So these 2, very difficult to give direct, bold instructions, because they are happening in a quite an occasional manner, a circumstantial way. So your attention has to be more and more sharpened as the meditation increases, the improves, and specifically when the mindfulness becomes sharper and sharper. But the good part is, when that happens, the influence of these 5 hindrances will be reduced. Usually in the traditional way, that means the conventional way, it says, first of all you have to develop a kind of concentration meditation to get rid of these 5 hindrances, then only you will be qualified to go into deep meditation like insight, and that is called samathayanika vipassana, the concentration based insight meditation. But here both of them are happening together. That is very challengeful, and you have to be very tactful. That means you are directly pay the attention to the materialistic thing or bodily phenomena, keep it the track, and follow the experience, the feeling of the in-breath and out-breath. More and more you become immediate, more and more you become penetrative, then the getting rid of hindrances or nivaranas, as well as understanding of the natural characteristics of the primary object, happen in the simultaneous way. So when that happens, if you happen to have an interview or a discussion, there are maybe 1/4 of the yogis can clearly report properly what is happening. Many may be doing good meditation, but they can't report. 1/4, as I mentioned, can do as well as report. Others always get bewildered, hazy mind, and entertaining doubts. They do not know what to do. So they also find difficult to give a good report. There is a kind of people, simply they don't understand these instructions, and they are volitionally get involved. They try to do regimentation of the mind and do with lot of preconceived ideas, and therefore they have no any sense towards their direct experience. So therefore explaining them and clarifying them is basically responsible goes to the teacher rather than the yogi, specifically in this vipassana meditation. That is why it has to be repeated again and again, and take example by example, and doing again and again this trial and error method. Then only one can understand this transitional period where the object becomes subtle, or object becomes sometimes boring, or object becomes sometimes monotonous. But even then, to understand whether one's defilements are, specifically the obsessional kind of defilements, reducing or increasing. That hardly one can do by oneself. That does not indicate that you can't do private retreats, but it's such a tricky things. So therefore, the listening, the discussions, interviews, everything has to come together. Then only the clouded situation can be can overcome correctly and in the constructive way. And because whenever you are observing one single object, which is happening repetitively, more and more you go penetrating into the object, there's a kind of a evolution, both in the mind as well as in the object happens. It is nothing of our individual characteristic or our personality traits. It is the way it happens. For example, in the simple physics, When the people are observing the external material, they wanted to see what is the minimum or smallest building block of this physical world. So at the beginning they agreed upon the molecule. And then they found that within the molecule you can reduce into the atoms. And they based upon their theories on the atoms. And when they are going to the subatomic parts, they into particles. They call particle physics. And still when they are observing the same thing, the particle physics went into the transitional period, transitional stage of matter to energy, energy to matter. When that happens, no more classical physics can explain that. For example, up to that point, you can explain the phenomena through the gravity. But soon the particle went into energy, the gravitational principle won't apply to energy. Or as far as it is a particle, it has the shapes, the the mass. But soon it go into the energy, there is no shape, there is no matter, there is no matter as a mass. So exactly the same thing happen, even though we are not going to a big lab or going through a microscope with the electron microscope. If you are observing the breath itself, at the beginning, the breath, the in-breath appears one phenomena, and the out-breath as separate. But if you are to observe very closely, very diligently, you can see within one breath, it is not a single operation, it's 1,001 little episodes, little in-breaths within one in-breath. Equally, a lot of tiny out-breaths within an out-breath. So at the beginning you may see, if you are sharp enough, there's a gap in between in-breath and out-breath, and the out-breath and in-breath. The moment you are going to see 1,001 little in-breaths in the one in-breath, 1,001 little out-breaths within out-breath, there's so much of gaps. And more you, when the breath becomes subtle, you may see the materialistic or the frictional part reduces, the space, the unperceivable part, the untouchable parts increase in light. That is the point where the mind loses its grip and start to entertain doubts. And your tendency will be increasing to do forced breathing, to bring back that rough breathing, to rough experience, the rubbing sensation, because you are starting from gross to the subtlety, so therefore find it very difficult to keep the track with. So with this transition is very, very important in the meditational practice, and that is to make a backbone in your spiritual path. So you have to go through this transition. It is appear to be a transition in materiality, but not only in the materiality, the observing mind itself going through a transition. So we have to be very patient, and that is the point Buddha says, sometimes the desirable thoughts, sometimes the undesirable thoughts can set in. So there, even though you are in the middle path, you have to be very sensitive, be aware not to take these undesirable thoughts to take you for a ride. Or the desirable thoughts or desirable feelings, desirable perceptions to take you for a ride. So that is why he says, Paccupannanca yo dhamman tata tata vipassani. Whatever may be the arising phenomena, you observe when and where it arises, unshaken manner, an irritable manner, unirritable manner. That means day by day you are going to the deep, you understand the mind, involvement of the mind, and there still you have to get rid of these extremes appearing in the very subtle way. And when you go there, today's experience will be helpful little further to go into the tomorrow's experience. And further, little by little, you're going. And same thing in the Theravada tradition, they say, if you are observing these two modes of the same breath, in-breath and out-breath, at the beginning, maybe at the beginning of your sitting, or at the beginning of your meditation career, easily you can see the in-breath versus out-breath. They are called individual characteristic or discriminative characteristic of the in-breath and out-breath. But as and when you become familiar with this breath, keep the breath face to face, slowly this individual characteristic will fade off, and instead the common character, the common trait of the in-breath and out-breath, the common character will come up. When that happens, if you are not go prepared, easily you will be distracted. Let me explain little in detail, because this is important in order to gain the so-called chitta viveka, kind of immaterial kind of establishment and equilibrium. At the beginning you may see in-breath is cooler and out-breath is warmer, or in-breath is shorter and out-breath is longer, or in-breath is longer, out-breath is shorter, all the characteristics. But when you keep on observing, more and more you to see these individual characteristics, everything going to appear like a just vibration, just a movement. Some people see this as a light. Some people experience this as lightness. So when these things are going to happen, your attention to the in-breath and out-breath in the discrete way become questioned, become doubtful, because you are not really prepared for this transition to happen. So instead, without letting this desirable feeling or undesirable feeling to happen, if you can cut through, then only you will be qualified to go into the most subtlest form of the in-breath and out-breath. And it is amazing to see, more and more you go to the deeper layers of in-breath and out-breath and the very subtle touch, you'll be far and far away from the sensuous experiences like seeing visual objects, hearing sounds, smelling, tasting and touching. The consciousness take a special kind of an equilibrium. It's far away from the sensuous experience, but centralizing, and some people call it as the whole body experience. You are experiencing something which you cannot explain as a seeing. You can explain it as a hearing or smelling or touching or tasting. But you are fully aware, you are vigilant, you are diligent. Even the very in-breath and out-breath, you have taken it as the primary object, is almost like ceases to exist. Unless otherwise you become master, you become skillful, not to dragon away by the desirable and undesirable feelings on the way, you will never go up to this kind of an equilibrium. So therefore it's a lot of involvements. You have to go through this mill, and then ultimately some sittings you can go into the very deep layers, and when you go there, definitely you are aware, you are not dead, you are not unconscious, you are not sleepy. But definitely the sounds may happen outside the world, they never come and interrupt you. There may be some bodily feelings even, but never become the unbearable. Maybe sometimes the wandering thoughts, the inner thoughts, the background thoughts are there. You feel like alien from that, and they appear like something outside. Even though you know you at the tail end, or the subtlest form of the breath, it is also happy like something or someone else, or you are observing someone else's breath. So this is a kind of an equilibrium where, as far as the materiality is concerned, corporeality is concerned, slowly you loses the interest toward the individual characteristics and come back and rest on the common character. And when that happens, the consciousness itself is coming from the outer periphery to slowly coming in. Introvertness happening. So, of course, each and every day you have to balance at the early part, then only you can come to the this kind of an equilibrium, and there the kind of a contentment is there, kind of a satisfaction is there, but not without a cost. Sometimes you fall into sleep. Sometimes you are entertaining doubts. Sometimes you've taken away due to the monotonous and the boredom. Sometimes the hilarious and gladness feelings. And sometimes halfway you become discouraged and get up and go. All these things happen that nothing is yours. Nothing is your individual mistakes. Each and every successful yogi has to go through one or the other. So that is why the Buddha says, at the beginning, at the outset, you must not entertain the past and the future, and select the middle path, or be in the present moment, and select one of the experienceable object and focus the mind, or be mindful upon that, and observe continuously in an uninterrupted way, and there you can see, even if you are in the middle part, the desire and the hatred can come and play in a disturbing manner. Whenever you are going to assume this desire or hatred as me, or mine, or myself, definitely you will taken away from for a ride, and will be worrying or overestimating upon you. All these things can happen. It's a duty of the Buddha to draw the map and say, these are the dangerous points, you have pitfalls and the other kind of thing. Keep the track with, not fallen into even the subtlest desires and the hatred, and to trod on the middle path that you can see through the chronological changes in your primary object. Simply from gross to the subtle, subtle to the subtlest. When that happens, the mind also slowly falls calm and quiet upon the object. And if you are successful, you are getting the distance from the distractions. So therefore it is the only single method or simple method available, that is to say the trial and error method. And if that only, you come to the Chitta Viveka. Chitta Viveka means you are fairly free from the 5 hindrances, and for the first time you are going to entertain kind of a contentment which is free from materiality. Throughout the life we were entertaining our mind with the materiality, seeing visual objects, listening sounds, smelling, tasting and touching. By in a strategic way, you eliminate many and keep the track with one thing, with the touch. And if you are successful, you can go to a kind of a balance, this equilibrium. We are fully in the mindfulness, fully in the vigilance. You can experience which is free from materiality, and it costs nothing and no maintenance necessary. And that is far excellence with compared with the materialistic pleasure. The amisha sukha is known as the materialistic pleasure. That is what we find in the worldly sensuous pleasure. This one is quite spiritual. This one is quite the religious kind of thing. But all the population, all the people cannot go into that, because it needs so much of a patipada or methodical system to go there and sacrifice many of your likings and dislikings and avoid the extremes. And when you go there, you can experience that is in the Theravada tradition is known as the Chitta Viveka. That means you are, to a certain extent, to a period of time, you are free from the 5 hindrances, that is the sensuous pleasure and the hatred, the sleepiness or sloth and torpor, or regret about the past and the excitement of the future, or entertaining doubts. So if you are aware, if you are thorough with the theory knowledge, when and where these things happens, you can appreciate it and you can experience it. But even if you do not know, if you understand these instructions and do accordingly, and then when you go there, you are the very first one to experience it. Even later, you can understand through the theory, but the experience is the most important, where you will understand your potential. Even if you understand it through your theory knowledge and the deductive knowledge, till that you go there and experience, it is very difficult to comprehend it. But this is not the crux of the teaching of the Buddha. This much of knowledge was available prehistoric Buddhist time. Before the Buddha appeared, in the Indian traditions, sometimes it's called as Brahmanism or Hinduism, this knowledge was there. The Buddha, to be the Prince Siddhartha, at the very early childhood age, he experienced it while his father is engaged in this ceremonial paddy ploughing ceremony. That means he has bought this from the past memories and the past lives, maybe. He went into. And after his renunciation, he met very good masters on these samatha techniques, or this chitta viveka, the solitude at the mental level. He went through, and even then he was not satisfied. He was not happy. He went further in King Kusala Gavesi, King Satcha Gavesi, with the quest to understand the absolute truth. And even after he is in enlightenment and the full understanding, he appreciated this method on the way in your spiritual path. At a time, you will develop some kind of a mastery towards the materiality. Going to the gross level of the materiality to the subtle, and go to the subtlest level. And when you go there, your mindset will be rather free from the visual objects, the sounds, the smells, the taste and the touch. And that is from there only you can see material and immaterial world, from the religious point of the worldly affairs and the transcendental affairs. So there you are better off. That means as if you can see from both the eyes. As far as you are skillful in the worldly affairs, the Buddha says you are one-eyed person. Whenever you come up to this chitta viveka, you open both the eyes so you can see the depth. Really speaking, from here onward only, the real spiritual path or real insight path going to start. So they were up to this much, it's a prerequisite, or you are qualifying yourself to go into the deep layers of your consciousness. And so far, you use this materiality as a guideline, as a rail in a footbridge. You keep the rail in order to maintain the balance. And if you go there, you see the potential of the human mind. It is not limited to this materialistic world. With the help of the materialistic world, if you go to this chitta viveka level, you are qualifying yourself, go to the upadi viveka, to understanding of the undermining tendencies lying deep in your consciousness. So therefore, in order to see them, in order to be aware of them, you have to do away with this gross type of defilements. The most gross type we call transgressional kind of thing. That is to say, physical and verbal misdeeds. So, being a yogi, being a person observing the 8 precepts, on principle you have accepted it. And when and where your meditation becomes successful, slowly you go into you are dealing with the second kind of defilement, that is called obsessional kind, namely these 5 hindrances. And with the help of your primary object, when you go there, at the very successful deep layers of the materiality, you can experience, you can be aware, this chitta viveka. From there only you are starting the journey toward the upadi viveka, that underlying tendency. That the same thing can explain in terms of feelings also. The same thing can explain in terms of perception, of volition and the consciousness. So, in this particular sutta, in days to come, we'll be again and again try to understand how it could be experienced through this other aggregates, because each and every one is not following the same path. Different people, the feelingful people, may find it is easy to understand through the Vedana-anupassana, the Vedana-khandha, aggregates of the feeling. Some people are with the more perception kind of, and they find easy to understand through this aggregate of perception. Some others are very fabricating and volitional type. They find easy to understand through this Sankhara-khandha, and others are with the consciousness itself. So, tomorrow I would like to take how can we experience and explain, specifically at least at the theoretical level, through the feeling as an aggregates, and hope when and where we are going to see this from the different facets, our knowledge will be more and more profound, and will be giving enough guidelines, someone to monitor one's own meditation. With that remark, I would like to sum up today's talk, and thank you very much for listening.